Long before dawn painted the Alaskan sky in pale lavender, the research vessel Northern Star sliced through glassy waters toward a remote trench where few ships dared venture. Below its hull, the submarine Aegis Explorer crept downward, steel ribs creaking as it descended through sunlit columns of plankton and drifting kelp forests. Inside the cramped command cabin, oceanographer Dr. Elena Morales calibrated sensors that tracked deep-sea currents and bioluminescent plankton blooms, data she hoped would unlock secrets of the ocean's carbon cycle. All seemed routine until a horrific shudder rattled the explorer's bulkhead. Green instrument lights flickered, then plunged into darkness as the main ballast pump seized. With a hiss of escaping air and a grinding groan, the sub's nose pitched downward, its angle steepening as ballast tanks failed to compensate. The aft compartment lit up with warning strobes, fried circuits and leaking hydraulics, while the overhead hatch slammed shut. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She gripped the console's edge as the vessel settled onto a silty ledge 800 feet below the surface, metal scraping against sediment like a tomb's closing stone. With oxygen levels ticking down and hull integrity weakened by the slide, Elena keyed her distress frequency into the communications panel. Her voice, steady despite her pounding heart, crackled through waterlogged channels. Explorer 2 to Northern Star. Mechanical failure. I'm secure, but losing power. Send ROV immediately. Seconds stretched into agonizing minutes before a garbled acknowledgement came through the static. Unseen in the icy gloom beyond the portholes, a pod of orcas glided in from the canyon's edge. Their smooth black bodies cut through darkness as they followed a faint pulse, the explorer's emergency beacon, mixed with the ocean's natural echo. At the head swam Tatiak, a weathered matriarch whose scarred dorsal fin told tales of decades prowling these depths. Her sonar clicks danced along the sub's hull, probing for escape routes through underwater pinnacles. Inside, Elena felt the subtle vibration of cetacean sonar, a pulse unlike any machinery. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and stared into the deep, where two shadowy shapes hovered. In that moment of terror and awe, she realized the ocean's stewards had arrived, not to hunt, but to guide. As the sub's emergency lights cast trembling beams into the water, the orcas formed a silent escort, their echolocation carving a living path through the abyss toward the fragile hope of rescue. On the deck of the Northern Star, neon blue screens pulsed with the explorer's last known coordinates. Captain Tobias Reed barked orders as the rescue team scrambled into action. Engineers hastily prepped the heavy-duty ROV, an amphibious drone equipped with video cameras, robotic arms, and powerful thrusters, while sonar technicians wrestled with conflicting pings on the hydrophone array. "Something's scrambling our rangefinder," muttered sonar lead Maya Chen, fingers dancing over controls as she filtered out a strange, rapid-fire echo. Every few seconds, the ROV's sonar map flickered, its images washed in static. "It's not just the seabed. There's another source down there." Back in the abyss, Tachiak's pod had grown in number as younger whales joined the matriarch. They fanned around the explorer, their rhythmic clicks tracing a safe corridor through a labyrinth of underwater pinnacles and silt-choked gullies. Tachiak communicated the path in a binary code of long and short pulses, guiding her companions, and unintentionally, the rescue team's sonar, away from debris fields that could entangle the ROV. As the ROV plummeted beneath the waves, its lights carved narrow beams through the murk. Every time its sonar sweep extended, the images warped. Rock faces blurred into ghostly shapes, and unexplained shadows darted just beyond the scan's edge. Maya's eyes widened. "Those aren't geological formations," she said, heart-pounding. "They're following the ROV." 200 feet above the Explorer, the ROV's cameras flickered to life, revealing orca silhouettes gliding alongside like sentinels. In the control van, Elena's live feed crackled with almost unbelievable footage. Tachiak and her pod shepherding the drone through archways of rock, pausing to peer at the sub's portholes, as though checking on its lone occupant. Captain Reed leaned forward in the glow of the monitors. "They're leading us in. Trust their path, and our machines follow." He keyed a command to adjust the ROV's thrusters, letting the Orcas set the pace. As the pod veered right into a narrow canyon, the drone glided through with effortless precision. Behind them, the Aegis Explorer loomed, its hull dented but intact. Inside the stranded sub, Elena's heartbeat echoed in her ears as she watched the ROV's floodlights approach. The Orcas clustered around the docking collar, their dark eyes reflecting yellow beams. Then, in a moment of perfect orchestration, the ROV's robotic arm latched onto the Explorer's external hatch controls, guided by Tachiak's sonar signature, and began the rescue sequence. Above and below the waves, biological wonder and human technology had forged an alliance. As the hatch began to turn, releasing Elena back toward the surface, she realized that the ocean's greatest navigators had become the rescue's silent heroes, proof that in the depths, trust can blossom between the most unlikely allies. As the ROV's articulated arm clicked the final ratchet, the Aegis Explorer's external hatch groaned open against the deep-sea pressure. Inside, Dr. Elena Morales exhaled in relief, only to find herself suspended in near darkness, weightless in the flooded entryway. The ROV's lights swept past her visor as she activated her sub's internal floodlights to guide the drone's slender frame into the lock-on collar. Outside, the pod of Orcas closed ranks around the sub. Tachiak, her scarred dorsal fin cutting a distinctive silhouette, pressed her broad pectoral flipper against the hull, stabilizing the vessel like a living anchor. Her companions formed a protective circle, calves nestled against adults' sides, while young bulls and sleek juveniles angled their bodies to counter the sub's tilt. Each whale's powerful musculature hummed with exertion, holding the Explorer steady against shifting currents and the ROV's thrusts. On the Northern Star, sonar operator Maya Chen followed the live echolocation feed. "They're literally propping it up," she whispered. Engineers watched in awe as the ROV's thrusters reignited, unbolting the Explorer's collapsed ballast clamps. With a hiss of released valves, the sub began to ascend, or rather it would have, if not for its Orca guardians. Tachiak and her pod matched the ROV's slow upward thrust, swimming in concert to guide the Explorer toward shallower straits. Inside the cramped cabin, Elena strapped herself into the rescue seat the ROV had extended. Through the reinforced viewport, she saw the whale's eyes, intelligent and calm, tracking her movements. A final sonar pulse from the matriarch signaled the ROV's pilot. "Proceed." With one steady surge, the drone disengaged its hatch collar and pivoted to push Elena's rescue capsule free of the Explorer's hull. As the capsule drifted upward, the whales parted to reveal a clear path through the kelp canopy. Elena peered out as the giant mammals banked alongside her capsule, their bodies reflecting the drone's floodlights like stained glass mosaics. Calves weaved between adults, trumpeting muted chirps of excitement as they escorted her toward the shimmering surface. Moments later, the capsule breached amid a swirl of bubbles. Ship's boats plucked Elena from the water just as the sun's morning rays fractured the waves. On deck, soaked and exhilarated, she pressed a grateful hand to her heart, and then raised it in farewell as the pod reassembled at the rescue site. With a final, resonant breach, Tadiak's triumphant salute, the Orcas slipped back beneath the waves, their mission complete. Above the ship's rail, Elena wrapped herself in a thermal blanket, tears mixing with salt water on her cheeks. She gazed out to the horizon, where the sea and sky blended in pale blue promise, and whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere deep below, in the silent corridors of the Aegis Explorer, the ocean's greatest rescuers returned to their realm, legends etched forever in the rippled echoes of human gratitude. As dawn's first glow tipped the horizon with pink and gold, Dr. Elena Morales sat bundled in a thermal blanket on the deck of the Northern Star, her breath still catching as the rescue capsule bobbed gently beside her. Around her, the crew cheered, but Elena's eyes were fixed on the still vibrating waterline where the Orca pod had guided her to freedom. Below the surface, tattoo-like patterns of light and shadow danced across the submarine's hull as the whales formed a protective ring. Matriarch Tachiak hovered nearest the Aegis Explorer's bow, her massive head turned toward the porthole where Elena had peered out in terror and wonder. Behind her, sleek forms of two adolescent males and three playful calves edged closer, their curiosity undimmed even by the chaos of rescue operations. Captain Tobias Reed ordered the diver's boat alongside the sub's escape chamber. "Clear the deck below," he bellowed, and deckhands scrambled to wheel out harness-equipped stretchers. Meanwhile, the ROV's thrusters idled in relief, its cameras capturing the final moments of this unprecedented alliance. On screen, engineers watched a calf brush its flipper gently against the sub's metal sheen, an almost tender gesture that spoke volumes of interspecies empathy. Elena slipped from the rescue capsule into a diver's harness and was lowered toward the overturned escape hatch of the Explorer. As she descended through the swirling bubbles, the pod parted to create a corridor of calm. Calves too young to dive pressed their faces against the water's surface above the sub, squeaking in high-pitched chirps that resonated like laughter. The elders maintained formation, their bodies shifting to compensate for currents and the diver's path. In the narrow chamber, Elena's boots clanked on the sub's outer shell as she made her way to the flooded compartment. The door's manual release had failed, so she triggered the ROV's auxiliary cutter, its serrated blade slicing metal as she worked by headlamp's beam. Above her, Tatiak's sonar clicks echoed through the hull, guiding her hands to the jammed hatch bolt. With a powerful heave, the wheel turned, and the hatch swung inward with a rush of silt-tainted water. Elena dove into the sub's corridor, her lungs burning, to reach her fellow crew member, engineer Marcus Yoon, who had stabilized in the control room. Together they climbed into the rescue capsule, which sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss. As the capsule's upward thrusters engaged, Elena gave a final wave through the porthole. Outside, a juvenile orca breached in salute, droplets cascading like stars in the morning light. Moments later, the capsule surfaced beside the Northern Star. Elena and Marcus were hauled aboard, amid cheers that shook the railings. Covered in salt water and relief, Elena staggered to the rail, heart pounding with gratitude. She whispered into the wind, "You saved me." And at that instant, Tachiak's blowhole erupted in a plume of mist against the sunrise, an answer in kind from the ocean's greatest rescuers. In the golden glow of dawn, human and oceanic worlds united in a moment beyond memory. A pod of orcas guiding steel behemoths and fragile humans alike toward salvation, their echoes of empathy resonating across the sea's shimmering expanse. Back aboard the Northern Star, the mood shifted from jubilant relief to awe and scientific urgency. As Elena and Marcus were wrapped in warm blankets and offered hot tea, Captain Reed convened an impromptu debrief on the bridge. Sonar lead Maya Chen replayed the ROV's recordings. Not only the pod's precise guidance of the drone, but also the whale's sonar pulses, seemingly synchronized with the rescue craft's maneuvers. Dr. Morales watched, her mind racing. They weren't just curious, she murmured. They understood our technology's signals and chose to intervene. Across the bridge, marine biologist Dr. Priya Desai adjusted her tablet, annotating waveform patterns that matched the pod's echolocation to the ROV's path corrections. "It's unprecedented," Priya said softly. "A clear example of interspecies cooperation." Their clicks acted as living navigation beacons. Meanwhile, deckhands worked to recover the ROV, its cameras and sonar logs intact. Engineers marveled at how the device's thruster commands had been mirrored by the orca's swimming formations, suggesting the whales sensed and reinforced the drone's intended trajectory. "They essentially became co-pilots," observed Chief Engineer Raul Vega, running a diagnostic on the ROV's guidance algorithms. Below decks, Elena began her own analysis, downloading mission logs and cross-referencing timestamps. She noted the pod's initial approach precisely coincided with the Explorer's beacon cycle, and their formation shifted in concert with her capsule's ascent rate. Each data point seemed to confirm what she had felt in her bones. The orcas had orchestrated a rescue ballet, blending instinct, intelligence, and an empathetic drive to save a fellow creature of the deep. As the Northern Star steamed eastward toward port, the crew gathered on deck to watch the ocean's surface. In the distance, Tatiak's pod surfaced one final time, calves breaching in unison, their dark bodies glinting in the afternoon sun. They lingered near the ship's bow, whether in farewell or quiet curiosity, before slipping beneath the waves with graceful arcs of dorsal fins. That evening, under a sky strewn with stars, Dr. Morales addressed the ship's crew in the mess hall. "Tonight we witnessed a bond that transcends species," she began, voice hushed with emotion. "These orcas taught us that empathy isn't unique to humanity. In the silent depths, they heard our distress and chose to save us." The room fell silent, every listener moved by the enormity of what they'd experienced. Outside, the moon cast a silver path across the sea, an echo of the orcas' guide trails beneath. And as the Northern Star sailed on through tranquil waters, its crew carried with them proof that, in the vast, uncharted realms of the ocean, compassion can bridge the divide between worlds. Guided by the sonar song of whales, who answered a call for help when no human beacon could have reached so deep. In the days following the rescue, the Northern Star's decks buzzed with preparations for a tribute expedition. Dr. Elena Morales, Captain Reed, Maya Chen, and engineers gathered in the ship's wet lab, reviewing every frame of the ROV footage. Their goal, not only to understand the rescue, but to honor the orcas' heroism by studying their pod dynamics without intrusion. At dawn, the ship slowed to drifting pace above the canyon, where the Aegis Explorer had lain stranded. Dive teams readied a specialized submersible, its velvet black hull painted with sonar-reflective markings to mimic the whale's own signatures. Elena checked her equipment twice: a high-resolution camera array, passive hydrophones, and a secure oxygen supply. This dive would be the first human attempt to share the orca's domain in daylight, seeking contact on terms they would choose. As the sub slithered beneath the waves, sunlight fractured through kelp forests above. The pod surfaced in formation, Tatiak at the lead, flank to flank with her juveniles, their dorsal fins slicing the water like polished blades. The sub's engines idled, and the crew held their breath. In the green-blue glow, the orcas clicked a greeting, a staccato ping that rippled through the sub's hull. Elena pressed her hand to the viewport, meeting Tatiak's golden eye. Below, the whales guided the sub along the same trench they had navigated the Explorer. Their sonar pulses sculpted a safe corridor through kelp thickets and jagged rock spires. Calves swam inquisitively close, inspecting the human craft with gentle nudges. In one breathtaking moment, a juvenile brushed its pectoral fin against the sub's acrylic dome, an unmistakable touch of friendship. Inside, Dr. Morales recorded every gesture. "They remember us," she whispered into her recorder. "They learned our plight, and now share their world in peace." Maya monitored the hydrophones, mapping the pod's calls into patterns that likely corresponded to named behaviors: escort, protect, investigate, even celebrate. The engineers verified that the sub's mimic frequencies had fostered trust, confirming that the orcas interpreted the craft's presence not as threat, but as kin reaching out. After an hour of silent communion, Tatiak signaled the end of the encounter with a final, resonant breach, her splash echoing like a benediction through the canyon. The pod then reversed course, guiding the sub back toward the surface, ensuring its safe transit as if repaying the debt of human rescue with a gift of their world. When the sub rejoined the Northern Star, the deck erupted in quiet applause. Wet lab doors opened, and the crew emerged with wide eyes and trembling voices. Elena stepped onto the deck beneath a rosy sky and addressed the gathered team. "Tonight, we go home not just as scientists, but as humbled witnesses to an intelligence that transcends our own. The orcas saved us, and today we saved nothing. They saved themselves." As the sun dipped low, the crew lowered wreaths of kelp into the sea, a final tribute to Tatiak and her pod. The green fronds drifted away, silent tokens of respect, and as the ocean swallowed the offerings, the clan's distant blows answered in kind, a promise that bonds forged in the deep would endure beyond any horizon. As the Northern Star steamed homeward, beneath a canvas of pink and gold sunset, Dr. Elena Morales stood at the rail, clutching the kelp wreath she had cast into the sea the previous evening. The gentle roll of the waves seemed to echo the orca's soft, resonant blows, an unspoken farewell and a vow of continued kinship. Below her, the ocean's surface glittered like scattered gems, each ripple a reminder of the bond forged in the silent depths. In the days that followed, Elena, Captain Reed, Maya Chen, and the engineering team turned the ship's conference room into a makeshift symposium. They pored over the submersible's data logs and the ROV's sonar recordings, comparing the whale's echolocation patterns with the drone's propulsion signals. What emerged was nothing less than a revelation. Tatiak and her pod possessed the ability to interpret human-made sonar pulses, to synchronize their own calls to guide technology, and more profoundly, to choose cooperation over indifference. News of the rescue and of the orca's pivotal role spread rapidly through scientific circles and global media. Marine biologists hailed it as the first documented case of cetaceans actively aiding a human life at sea. Conservationists seized upon the story to underscore the intelligence, empathy, and agency of these apex predators, arguing for stronger protections of their habitats and migration corridors. UNESCO declared the Rescue Canyon a marine mammal sanctuary, and international navies revised sonar protocols to minimize interference with whale communications. Back on land, Elena was honored with an award from the World Marine Science Federation, but she wore it quietly, knowing the real heroes swam free. She established the Tatiak Initiative, a research program dedicated to studying orca-human interactions under respectful, non-invasive conditions. She and Maya co-authored papers on sonar interoperability, proposing protocols for sonar etiquette that would allow vessels to communicate safety information to whales rather than disrupt them. Captain Reed converted his ship's hold into a mobile outreach center. He invited coastal communities, fisherfolk, ecotourism operators, naval officers to experience the ROV's footage and sonar reenactments, fostering a new appreciation for life beneath the waves. His impassioned talks, punctuated by live recordings of Tatiak's clicks, transformed skeptics into stewards and inspired governments to invest in whale-friendly navigation systems. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Rescue Canyon, Tatiak's pod resumed its ancient patrols, joined by younger generations born since the Explorer incident. They carried no memory of Elena's distress, but they swam the same routes, their sonar clicks still resonant with the echoes of that historic rescue. And somewhere in their collective consciousness, the pattern of human-made pulses remained, a testament to the moment they answered an SOS across species lines. On the Northern Star, Elena stood once more at the railing as the ship cut through calm seas toward new horizons. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Tatiak," knowing her words would never reach the deep, but trusting that in some form they already had. Above her, a pod of orcas surfaced in the distance, their dorsal fins breaking the sunset glow in a fleeting salute. And as Elena watched them vanish beneath the waves, she carried in her heart the certainty that the ocean's greatest navigators had forever changed the course of human understanding, and that from that day on, we would listen more closely to the silent songs of the deep.